These stories raised a host of questions. Why hadn't the military been better prepared to treat post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and mild and moderate traumatic brain injury, MTBI, especially given the purported lessons of the war in Vietnam? Why weren't the Army and the Department of Veteran Affairs, VA, more effectively screening for PTSD and MTBI? Why were troops being denied care, sent back to Iraq despite their mental health needs, or discharged from the military without benefits? Why were so many soldiers and veterans killing themselves? Why wasn't the Army and the VA doing more to address these issues? These examples also illustrate that these conditions took on a range of meanings. They were, in the Los Angeles Times and Obama's usage, cause for deep concern. For the New York Times, they were evidence of the Bush administration's disingenuousness, malfeasance, and indifference. For Kieran, they were challenging problems that required research. Signature Wounds examines how Americans, policymakers, military leaders, caregivers, Army and VA researchers, and the broader public understood the mental health issues that the United States 21st century wars generated, and how they mobilized those understandings to engage in broader political and cultural debates about the wisdom and management of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, the military's place in American culture, and the United States' role in the world. This story embraces anthropologists Sarah J. Hautzinger and Gene Scanlon's claim that, in the post-9/11 wars, psychological injuries have taken center stage in the ways we talk about, digest, and engage with war and its consequences. And Kenneth T. McLeish's assessment is that the length, scale, and distinct character of the Iraq War have subjected American soldiers and their families to longer and more frequent deployments, leading to unprecedented rates of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and traumatic brain injury, TBI, and the overburdening of military institutional supports. It unfolds by analyzing the interesting and often intertwined ways in which the stakeholders understood these issues and debated their significance. In media, popular culture, and political rhetoric, the increasing incidence of post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and soldier and veteran suicide was evidence that the Iraq War was misbegotten and mismanaged by a callous administration, unwilling to acknowledge or address the human consequences of its misguided policies. For researchers and clinicians, these issues were complicated but solvable medical problems, conditions about which there was great uncertainty, and that demanded rigorous research around prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. For many Army leaders, they were at once tactical dilemmas that required immediate attention amid the demands of two prolonged wars, and evidence of a crisis that raised larger existential questions about military institutions and their place in the nation. These three discourses were not discrete. In the decade that followed the United States invasion of Iraq, they often intersected, and the resulting debates were sometimes acrimonious. Members of Congress and senators who seized upon notions of mental health issues to fuel anti-war critiques often looked askance at Army researchers who maintained that combat stress was expected, if not inevitable, and usually temporary and treatable, raged at Army policies that allowed troops with mental health diagnoses to deploy to Iraq, and portrayed VA officials who maintained that they were making effective inroads in addressing veteran suicide as emblematic of the administration's broader failures. Soldiers, veterans, and their families frequently felt that Army and VA leaders were merely paying lip service when they claimed to be aware of and working to address mental health needs, and they criticized a system that they viewed as bloated with self-interested bureaucrats. Veterans Administration officials grew increasingly frustrated when anecdotal accounts that the failure to treat a particular veteran had resulted in a suicide overwhelmed their claims to be providing the best evidence-based care available. Inside the Army Medical Department, or AMED,